how to turn a game day visit into a football scholarship. If your son's getting game day visit invites right now, we're going to share with you today how to validate that invite, make sure it's actually real, and then the entire process from step 1 to step 6 of how to turn the invite all the way into an offer, including what to say when you're there, what to do when you're there, how to handle it, what to do beforehand, what to do after, and everything in between.
You're listening to the Football Scholarship Podcast, the playbook for parents and athletes who want to secure the best football scholarships possible. From securing a D1 football scholarship in the SEC at Ole Miss at just 5'7", 150 pounds, myself, to helping 83% of the athletes I mentor achieve football scholarship offers and 42% going Division I, I've learned countless lessons that I'll be sharing right here with you. Join me and my co-host Brian Overton, who has 15 years of D1 college football recruiting experience, as we interview top experts, successful athletes, and discuss current recruiting trends. Together, we'll help you navigate the recruiting process so you too can achieve your dream of running out of that tunnel in front of 100,000 screaming fans.
And joining me today is our co-host and our head coach here at Next Play, Brian Overton, who has over 15 years of Division I recruiting experience. So, Brian, this is an exciting topic. Number one, thanks for being here. It's been a little while since we've podcasted. We've had so many coaches on, but this is a topic we've been getting a lot of questions about, and I'm excited to dive into. But glad you're here, Brian.
Yeah, glad to be back. I think this is really helpful. Like you said, it comes up a lot this time of year. Spending a lot of time with our guys on it right now and their parents, trying to help them understand the process. So hopefully this will help a lot more people understand it and so they can attack it effectively.
Yeah, 100%. And like one thing I want to just state, like as a goal for this podcast is the invite. Like it's very similar to camps, but the invites that you're getting right now, like I look at it like for every invite you get or every game day that you go to, there should be, one of 2 or one of 3 should lead to offers. Like that's what we want. Instead of just going to a bazillion game day invites that you get, I want you to understand how they work and then what your son should do on these game day invites specifically so that he actually gets offers. You're not just wasting a bunch of time traveling around the globe for invites that wouldn't lead to anything. Just like camps, you know what I mean? It's very similar to camps. So I just want to, let parents know like that's a big focus point for today. And then also like the big thing to note too is it's not just the wasted time of going to a game day visit. A lot of people are like, oh, we'll just travel and go to game day visits. It's like, yeah, it's not just the wasted time of the travel and the game day visit. It's the $200,000 scholarship you left on the table because you didn't go to the game day visits you should have went to. Does that make sense, Brian? Like,
absolutely.
So let's talk about step 1. What is step 1, Brian, when we get a game day invite?
The first thing, we teach our guys to do and that we would highly recommend is, you got to validate it. You know what I mean? And what I mean by validated is, we're going to make a lot of references as we're talking here to camps, you know what I mean? And that's the easiest way, I think, to maybe marry them together because there's a lot of the same processes, right? And I'll start with validating it with a conversation I've had with so many of our clients and parents up to this point. So understanding that, what I mean by validating it is, once you get it, you want to reach out to whomever sent it to you or a coach at that school or somebody, in the program that you've either been communicating with, or if you just got it randomly, that's the first red flag right there. But find out get in touch with somebody, respond to the email, or if you have contact information, get in touch with the coach, right? And, you obviously want to thank them for the invite, and all that good stuff. And coach, I'm really interested in coming. But you also want to find out, have they watched your tape? Because listen, guys, this is from many years of experience. If they have not watched your tape and can't give you feedback on the tape, and at least a couple things of why they like you and why they like you to get you up for a game and things like that, then it's a dead invite. You know what I mean? It came from somewhere that's not obviously personalized. So the first step, in doing that is validating the invite in general. So that's the very first step you need to go through right there.
Exactly. It's like you get invites, cool. So we're going to validate it. And when we validate it, the way you validate it is or reaching back out to that coach and really confirming, like, have you watched my game film? Before I make this 5-hour trip, 3-hour trip, this is your response, right? Before I make this 3, 4, 5-hour trip, 10-hour trip for some people, or even further, do you have a minute for a quick call? Have you had a chance to watch my video yet? And really get an understanding of where this coach is. If you're not getting responses to this, then more than likely it's because, it's just a blast email or a blast text. If they respond back to you and they're glad to get on a call with you, or they're happy to, or they explain to you that they've seen your video and here's why they feel like you're a good fit, then it's like, okay, there's something serious here. There's an opportunity here.
Yeah.
My thing from there is you got to talk to these coaches. You got to get on a phone call with these coaches. If you're going to travel to a school, Brian, and they won't talk to you they won't even get on a phone call with you.
Then they're not going to talk to you when you're there because they have no idea who you are. That's the premise of it right there. And a parent asked me a good question the other day, and I said I was going to definitely bring it up here because it's a very, very viable question. They were like, so, well, why did they, if that's the case, why send them all out? Why send them to just random people if they're not interested in them, and and things like that. You know what I mean? Which was a great question, and it can happen for a couple reasons. Right off the top of my head, understand that, guys, and this is more outside of the football realm, more of an athletic department thing. But like most schools, before the season, they tell the football program, okay, hey, you got X amount of tickets allotted for this game, right? And typically it's the same, for the most part. But if you have a bigger game, a lot of times they'll try to work with you and try to get you more, recruiting tickets, to get good players to the game. But obviously everybody's games aren't attended the same, right? Like, some people, either the team's not very good or, it's just not attended well because of the area they're in. It doesn't matter. But, say a Division II school, gets 50 recruit tickets for the game or something, and they don't feel like they're probably got enough players on their board, or they're not getting enough people committed to actually coming to the game to use them all. Well, they're trying to put butts in the seats. As crazy as that may sound, like they want to get as many people there as they possibly can. One way to do that is recruiting, because you've got all these tickets. They don't have to pay for them. So if you want to actually get people to the game, like, they just blast it out on their list they have, and try to get you to drive 7 hours to come to the game, just as a butts in the seat, but then you drove 7 hours.
Parents of high school football players, you're probably already investing in private schools, trainers, nutritionists, camps, and travel, doing everything you can to help your son, but he's still not getting the level of exposure he deserves, and all that effort is going to waste. That's why I created the Football Scholarship Playbook, and inside are the exact step-by-step systems, scripts, and templates I used to earn a Division I SEC scholarship at Ole Miss at just 5'7" and 150 pounds, and that I now use to help athletes just like your son, where 89% of the players who follow this playbook earn scholarship offers. And right now, I want to send you a copy completely free. All that I ask is that you just cover shipping. So if that sounds interesting, click the link in the bio or go to gonextplay.com/free, grab your copy today, and give your son the proven system to earn the offers he deserves.
You know what I mean? So I thought it was a great question, but that's one of the reasons they do that. And then the other reason is, guys, it does come down to the recruiting board, right? And they may say every game we're gonna invite like our top 8 to 10 guys at each position on our board. But if you may not know where you are on that board, but you may be on that list, to be invited. Right? That's why the validation is so important, okay? Because if you're the 10th guy and they're only taking 2 guys and they got 4 guys they really like, they got a long ways to go before they get down there to you, right? Whereas at another school, if you're, the 3rd or 4th guy on the board and you're really close, to getting over the hump maybe and getting an offer because you've had the right conversations with the coach, the game day visit can sometimes maybe get you over that hump because they get to see you in person, you get to see the school and evaluate them and things like that. So there are different scenarios that can go on as to why they happen in mass text and mass email. So I just wanted to explain that to people too, because I thought it was a good question from one of our parents.
It is really good. They're like, well, why would coaches mass
right.
email or text?
And then they were asking because, well, if they're inviting me, why won't they respond back to me? When I'm asking them, have you seen my tape and all that stuff? Well, they it's probably not it's probably not them personally inviting you. There's other scenarios that can happen, like the ones I just talked about, where you may get one. So I just wanted to make sure I brought that up because I did think it was a good question.
No, I like that. So I am curious though, like, because we'll get into the steps, but I think this is a good point of just parents understanding the recruiting process, right? And that's what we try to do on this podcast and in general, is just teach the actual facts of what happens. So, like, what's the difference between a game day visit invite when you were running the whole recruiting department at Arkansas versus FIU, right? Because FIU is a smaller, very small Division I program. Arkansas is the SEC, right? Like, what was the difference in those game day invites? What were from the coach's perspective? What were you trying to accomplish?
Yeah. So obviously the bigger the school, like I said, it's a much more the bigger the school, the much more targeted approach it is to who is there and why they're there. Obviously, because you have the manpower and the personnel and all that stuff, like you are at the bigger, the top of the top, Division One Power Four guys, they are really locked in on who they're after and why they're after them. There's not a ton of fluff, for very many, game day invites. And what I mean by fluff is, if you got, well, keep the same number at 50. If you have 50 kids there, on a game day visit, I mean, 40 to 45 of them, you want them there, and you know why they're there, and you're trying to get them, like you're fighting other schools for them, da da da. Da. And there may be a one-off here and there. The lower you get in divisions, sometimes, I'm not saying that a good number of them are not targeted, you know what I mean, but there gets into more of, relationship building and trying to get guys there that are more backup plans and options versus like the really targeted guys, because they have to spread a wider net, if that makes sense. So that's
Yeah.
why it even trickles down into Division Two and NAIA and places like that, where if they got 50 guys there, probably 15 of them are like their guys. Like, I mean, they're very targeted. They
Yeah.
probably already offered them. They're either already offered them or they're getting ready to. And the other ones are those guys that I just talked about a little further down on that board, where you need to have real conversations about, do I need to go because am I close enough to maybe tipping the scale or not? You know what I mean? So that's the difference when you get up and down in levels like that. It just, the higher you get, the more targeted and the more direct they are, and very strategic on who they have there and why they have them there, if that makes sense.
Right, because like NAI and D2 programs, they're just trying to get guys that are actually playing at that level to be able to attend. And it's
Right,
tough. Like, it's
right.
tougher at those smaller
Yeah,
schools. Whereas like in Arkansas, and we try to explain this as upfront as we can with parents, but like the SEC, for example, there's like 300 guys, 350 guys, maybe 400 guys, and every school is targeting the same guys, and they're all selling the same people. Like, that's the game at that level. It's very different than what Brian and I teach and talk a lot about, right? The recruiting process for players that are SEC level versus players that are Division II or even FCS Division I level, and even smaller Group of Five level. It's just such a very different recruiting process. And the tables are very much flipped, right? So what Brian was doing at Arkansas, it was purely schmoozing, and doing everything you can to sell every 4-star player and maybe a 5-star guy here and there to go to their school over Ole Miss or LSU. Or whereas at the Division II level, you're trying to get players that are actually Division II level graded players to be able to even come to the game day visit and be excited about it, right? So it's just a very different. Go ahead, Brian.
no, and not to cut you off, but to be brutally honest with you guys too, is that's the reason why when guys spend so much time at the wrong level on game day visits, they miss out on so many opportunities at the other place, because so many people are telling them, that you're a, X whatever division so and so player, and it's out of their, and it's not matching their tape, but they're spending all their time at schools that don't match their tape, and they're just spinning their wheels. So they go to 4 or 5 game day visits that year in the wrong divisions, when they might have had 4 or 5 offers if they were going to the game days in the right divisions. Like you said, if you're a Division II player and you're going to Division II schools on game day visits, or NAIA player or FCS player, and you're going to those schools on game day visits because that's where you should be targeting based on your talent level, right? You're going to have a much more higher percentage of turning those into offers versus chasing the ones 4 or 5 weekends a year that that aren't interested. So that's how the tables get turned there when Richie's saying like it's hard to even get Division II level players sometimes to come to the games. It's because they're going to the Division I games because they were on some mass email, or they're going with their buddy who's actually getting recruited just because they want to go to the game and have a good time. And I'm not knocking that, but when we're talking about you
Yeah.
trying to get a scholarship and your football recruiting, that doesn't make a lot of business sense.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like one thing we always say is like it's same thing with camps, right? Like go to the big time game day visit, go to the big time camp, but just go to one of them. You know what I mean? Just go get the experience. Great. But if you want offers, the rest of your time has to be spent at the level that you're currently playing at. And if you're a parent and you're listening to this right now and you're like, what do you mean grading at playing? So one of the things that you can do as a parent is get your son evaluated. And in an evaluation, they'll let you know what level your son is currently playing at, right? Because even if someone says your son's Division I, is he Division I SEC or is he Division I Big 12? Like that's at just the Power 5 level. There's two different tiers. And then is he Division I Group of 5 or is he Division I FCS? There's like 4 tiers of Division I alone. Or is he Division II? Or is he NAI? Or is he Division III? Right? And knowing where is he at. So obviously, I'm sure there's other people that do it. If you're interested in having us do an evaluation, you can go to gonextplay.com/evaluation if you're interested in having us do your son's evaluation. But that's one thing we highly recommend in the recruiting process. If you're doing outreach, if you're posting on social media, if you're doing activities in recruiting and you don't know where your son currently grades and you're reaching out to the wrong schools at the wrong level, you're just going to spin your wheels and waste 2, 3, 4 years of your time and then be in a bad situation senior year. So regardless of what freshman, JV, or varsity game film you have, if you have any type of high school game film, I highly recommend getting evaluated. So all your effort, your camps you go to, the game day invites you go to, the emails you send, the social media stuff you do, everything is geared towards those divisions. And then like one thing too is, and Brian, this is an interesting topic, but everyone's always like, well, I don't want to go to Division II because I want a Division I or bust. And it's like, listen, I don't know if you live under a rock, but if you've heard of this guy named Trinidad Chambliss, he's the story of college football. I think he's 5th in Heisman odds right now. And he was the Division II won a Division II championship, went from Division II to the SEC, and is tearing the SEC apart. All right, so Cam Ward, FCS guy, #1 draft pick, right? So just because it's where you start, it doesn't mean that's where you're going to end. And if you're just spending all your time at the wrong level, you're not giving yourself time to develop to get to that level. And people are like, oh, well, you played in the SEC. Yeah, but I didn't start there. I went to an FCS school first, and I transferred. So same concept, Brian. But does that mean, like, I just feel like that's an important thing for parents and players to hear. It's like you don't have to start at the Division I level, right? You can start where you're at now, get offers, get opportunities, get your school paid for, right? And then develop as a player and move up.
Yeah, and I think the reason that thing is going around, and it always has, like the plague, it's like, oh, Division I, but my son really wants to play Division I. Well, welcome to all 100,000s of players in high school that want to play Division I.
1.1 million.
That's okay to want to, but there's a realistic standpoint that has to come into play, eventually. And the problem is a lot of parents and players don't truly understand the level of play in college, period. I mean, I have so many conversations with a lot of our parents and, things like that. And, I've worked with players that, as soon as they signed, I had a kid that signed, Division II and out of high school, as a high school coach, and his dad, as soon as he signed and got him off to school, he was messaging me, hey, what do we need to put on his tape, or like, what does he need to show on his tape? What's the best way to get his tape out so he can transfer after this year, and transfer up, before he'd ever played a game, at the Division II level, and he can't even get off the scout team. He couldn't even get off the scout team at the Division II school he was at, and before he had ever showed up, his dad was talking about transferring. So you got to be where your feet are, guys, because the talent level in college football is a huge uptick from what you're playing right now in high school. All right, I don't care what division we're talking about. All right, playing college football is a big deal. There's a lot of good players out there, and I'm not saying that you can't be one of them, right? But finding the right division is critical, and having goals is one thing, but being where your feet are and getting as good as you can be where you are currently, whether it's in high school or college or whatever the case may be, like, it's critically important. But you have to understand really that the talent level out there is much higher than you may think it is. You get caught up in a division and what everybody's talking about on social media and this, that, and other, and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of good players. And he just talked about two of them, and I could talk for an hour about them because I've taken them. I've taken them in the transfer portal. I've signed them as out of high school as a high school coach. There's a lot of good players in all those divisions, and you need to understand that when you're trying to pick up. That's why game day visits are important. We've had guys on our roster right now that have gone on game day visits to Division II NAIA schools, even Division III schools, that are blown away when they get there and see the players that are there and some of the facilities that are there at some of these schools, right? They're like, Coach, I'm not really excited. It's a D3 school or it's an NAIA school. And they get back from their visit, they're like, Coach, it was totally different than what I thought it was going to be. Like, these guys are huge. Like, their facilities are nice, So you better have a little bit more of an open mind, you know what I mean? And treat it with a little more open mind as you go forward through the process, especially when it comes to like what we're talking about, game day visits, and not blowing them to the side because it's not the division that you feel like it should be, especially if you hadn't been eval.
Yeah, 100%. So it's good conversation, and I think like so as far as the game day invites, you get an invite, we want to validate it. We validate it by finding out if they've watched your video and by getting on a phone call with them. When you're on that phone call with them, here's a couple questions that you can ask to get them talking and to really validate it, basically. One is, what's something you guys are really looking for in a player at my position? This is a question your son will ask, right? Another one is, what's one thing I should focus on this offseason to improve as a player? Those two will let you know if they've watched the film, right? And as for your program, am I currently being evaluated or am I currently on your board? Where do I stand at this point? So those questions let you know legitimately, where have they evaluated your son? Where is he at in the process? Is there going to be an opportunity for an offer? And then based on those questions, you've now the coach cared enough to talk to you on the phone. He cared enough to answer those questions for you, which means that they've watched your video. And now you can actually now you have clear expectations of what this game day is going to actually be like. And is there going to be an actual opportunity for an offer? Because a lot of schools offer on game day invites, but a lot of kids go to game day invites and the kids that they are offering on those are not them, right? And we don't want that to happen. So those are some simple questions that you can ask. And then at the end, what we teach our players to do is to set a time to meet with the coaches while you're there. Sometimes it's tough after the game. Sometimes they'll meet before the game. Sometimes they'll meet after, but the next day, right? So setting that up front is going to be very helpful. I know, for example, I don't know every school. I don't know if you guys did at Arkansas, but at Ole Miss, for example, a lot of the big time recruits, they'll meet with them on the next day, on Sunday. Did you guys do that at Arkansas too, or did you leave it all on?
No, I mean, if they were in a position where they could stay, typically that happened, more so after a night game or something like that, when it was hard to travel back or they had a long ways to go. Sometimes they would opt to stay that night, and we would do some stuff on Sundays. But here's the reality of it, guys. If they're interested in you and they like you, they're going to find some time to get in front of you. Period. Whether it's before the game, whether it's, hey, meet me after the game over at the facility, whatever the case may be. If they're serious about you, they're going to find some time to get in front of you at some point that day. That's what I would say keep in mind when you're asking questions like that.
Yeah. And when you get there and you see the coaches, go straight to the coaches, shake their hand, introduce yourself, be excited to be there. Not just, wait back for coaches to maybe come and see you or find you. Like, take initiative, go to the coaches, shake their hand, be excited. That shows confidence, number one. And it also shows that you care and you want to be there and you're excited to be there.
Body language is the biggest expression you give off in those situations, by far.
Yeah. Like when you have players that how many players did you guys have on your game day visits? You said 50?
I mean, that was a round number. I mean, if we had a big game, it could be upwards of 100, that'd be about 300 people if they all brought 2 people. So it kind of depends. It kind of depends.
Right. And so, I mean, there's only 10, 15 coaches and not all of them, so there's players that on game day visits, like that are there that if they don't take initiative, you might not even talk to a coach at all.
There's a good chance that's going to happen.
So
yeah.
You got to take initiative. You know what I mean? The coaches are going to have their 5, 10 guys that they're focused on. But again, even if you did talk to them beforehand and they're interested, you still need to go and take initiative and show them that you care, show them that you're excited to be there, that you want to be there. And coaches look like how you interact with other players, with other parents. They're looking for that stuff, especially if everyone's at the same playing level and they could play, which that's the only game day visits you should be going to, right? So what are some questions, Brian, do you think they should be asking the coaches? Like they get there, they shake the coach's hand, they're in that room, maybe there's coaches mingling and stuff. What are some really important key questions that the players should be asking while they're on campus?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking to them, let's say it's before the game, I always was a big fan of, guys that were like invested in us too, and then kind of got into their specific situation. So, coaches are jacked up on game day, guys, just like you are. Like when you play, like they're ready to go, man. That's why you coach. Just the same reason you practice to play. You coach to get to the game day, to coach your guys in the game and watch them be successful. I mean, they're excited and like ready to go. So, anytime you can ask them specifics about the game, like how do you feel about today, coach? You know what I mean? Going into the game and get them talking about, what they got to do to win the game. Most of the time they'll get into it. If you're a D lineman, you ask the, hey man, we really got to stop the run today. We got to make this quarterback one dimension. They might go off on this, da 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 da. And that usually sometimes will open the door, you know what I mean, to your position and saying, you know what I mean, well, coach, having said that, I know we've been talking a little bit, you watched my tape, how do you think I could fit into that, you know what I mean, in a game like this, maybe one day down the line, you know what I mean, with my skill set and things like that, or, what are some of those things you guys have worked on this week, I need to show on tape in order, maybe to get myself up towards getting an offer, you know what I mean, and things like that. So I think that always was very smooth transition, opening the door to get to your specific situation, and then kind of going with the flow at that point of kind of seeing where you're at, maybe on their board and what you need to do to get an offer, or, how close you're getting to an offer. And then, finishing, with what the next steps would be, once you left, once you left the game. What the next steps would be while you have the coach in front of them. That's what I would say, because you guys, you got to get the most bang for your buck, because this is not going to be a 20-minute conversation probably. Every now and then, maybe if they catch you down on the field in warm-ups early enough, they can talk to you a little longer. It may be in like a room setting before they take you down to the field, or they may grab you on the field and talk to you. So you got to get the most bang for your buck. And a lot of times, if you, like I said, I think I'm a believer in if you break the ice on like what's going on that day with them, and kind of how they're attacking that game, or, what they worked on heavily this week based on their opponent, sometimes it loosens them up and really gets them talking and flowing versus hey, coach, what do you like about me? He's thinking about third and long already. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I like to tap into where their mind is right away, and then let that open doors to your situation and get good information about your specific recruiting process.
Yeah, I like that. Because that's what they're focused on at that point. So getting the conversation started there is really important. And then moving it to, I know you watched my film based on where do you feel like, I could fit as part of the program. What's one thing I should focus on, and where am I at on your board? These are all questions you got to ask too, and it's like, I love Brian's thing, because you want to get the coaches talking. Like, one thing you don't want to do is the coach, you go talk to the coach, and then it's just this awkward, like, you don't have questions prepared. You got to be prepared, right? And that's why we we like put together questions and scripts and stuff for players, so they're not like just sitting there with nothing.
If you're already spending thousands on personal trainers, nutritionists, private schools to help your son live his dream of playing college football, but he's not getting the exposure he deserves, and you don't want to let him settle for average, then you're going to absolutely want to be at this live training that I'm doing, where I'm going to share with you exactly what you can do to help your son to start getting 5 responses from college coaches every single day, from how to properly set up his social media profiles to when and how to post, to actually send the right messages to the right coaches so that they actually respond, and how do you respond when they do respond. So you don't have to spend thousands of hours trying to figure it out because you probably don't have the time, and so that you have everything you need to help your son be successful. So you're absolutely going to want to leave there. I'll leave a link below where you can register. Look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah.
So
And you don't want
that
him to
conversation.
have to drive the conversation.
Hell no.
That is awkward because he's going to ask you the basic questions that he's going to ask every recruit that comes in there. All right, how was your
Right.
game Friday night? How'd you guys play? How's your season going? They're going to ask all of them that. And then he's probably going to ask you how your recruiting's going. If they're interested in you, they'll ask how your recruiting's going because they're trying to feel out how serious other people are about you. Make sure you tell the truth. All right, because they can find out. Coaching world's very small. They can call and find out. You tell them you got offered by these 5 or 6 schools, and they call their buddy there, and they say, I don't even know who this guy is, and it's over before it starts. So I will say that, if you're going to get asked how your recruiting is going a lot on game day visits in front of the coach, so be honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, just stuff like that, man. They're going to ask a certain amount of questions, you know what I mean? But it's always, and it's an initiative thing, right? It's a personality checkbox, like, you know what I mean? You're showing initiative to have the conversation. That's almost like a leadership characteristic. That's almost like an out front characteristic, and things like that translate well into the locker room and on the field eventually, maybe as a leader on the field and off the field and in the community and things like that. So, it triggers body language and things like that, as far as asking questions and being engaged, can move the needle more than you think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then, to add to what Brian's saying, once you've kind of gotten the questions going, you got to ask, you got to find out where you're at on their board, right? And this might be something that you ask, after the game, hopefully, because you set that time to speak with them. And then depending on where you're at on the board, you could discuss the opportunity for an offer, right? But you gotta make sure they've watched your film. They talked to you beforehand. You're on their board, high up on their board, and then it's just the next logical step, right? It's the same thing with camps. If you go to it awkward, you don't talk to the coach beforehand, you don't know if they've watched your film, you can't even have that discussion around an offer. It just doesn't even make sense, right? So you want to be in that position to have that conversation. And that's why these questions are so important. And that's why, having an evaluation is so important. And then afterwards, making sure you guys are following up, sending the emails, sending letters, like to showing the coaches you're excited to be there. And that, thank them for the opportunity to be there and for your conversation and to share and to discuss what the next steps are, right? You should have had that conversation at the visit, and then you send them a follow-up email or a DM just reiterating what they already told you to do, what the next steps were on that visit. So really good stuff. And I think it's just really important. This is stuff as a parent, as a player, you got to know this stuff. You got to execute this process. And you got to do it flawlessly. And if you do that, you're going to end up with offers. If you don't have a plan, if you don't have a process that you're following, you're going to really struggle with the recruiting process, right? And we don't want that. So, Brian, is there any other last things you want to share about game day visits for parents that come to mind?
No, the only other tip I'll say is the one we give them at camp all the time too is, guys, phone numbers are king. So, and that can give you a little gauge too of how serious they are. Do they want to communicate with you with a phone number, or are they going to say, I'd rather you just use social media right now. Yeah, I'm bigger, I'm better on DM right now. That's not true. The top players on his board, he's talking to on the phone, he's texting, things like that. So always try to get the phone number. You don't have to press it, you know what I mean? But you got to ask, hey, coach, can I just grab your number so I can kind of keep you updated on my season, check in every now and then? Shoot you over some tape, get some feedback, and always try to get that phone number. Phone numbers are king, man. And that's a good opportunity to do it when you're right in front of the coach, on a game day visit. So I just want to throw that out there. That's a good gauge of interest a lot of times too. Not all the time, but a very high percentage of the time, that's a good gauge of their interest.
Seriously, yeah, because if they're like, no, I'll just give you my X handle, it's like, they're just not as serious right now. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean forever,
Yeah, and
but it
that's
means right
okay.
now.
That's okay because you can still build a relationship, doing that, DMs and stuff like that. So I'm not saying they don't like you at all. I'm just simply saying you need to bring it up, you know what I mean, and try to keep moving the needle towards using a phone number and text messages and phone calls as much as you can.
So, Brian, really appreciate you coming on, man, and having this conversation around game day visits and how to turn them into offers. I think this is it's a really important topic for the time right now. And so, appreciate you coming on, sharing a lot of your insights from as being a recruiting director for over 15 years and kind of sharing that with parents. And then we kind of shared with them just our process a little bit of how we teach, what we teach our athletes, and everything else. So if you got value from this video and you'd like to watch more videos just like it, if you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification. If you're on wherever you listen to your podcast, if you leave a review with a question, we always go back to those and try to answer those questions in the podcast. So that gives us good ideas to bring to you. So we appreciate having you here. We look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Scholarship Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. And for more free resources, or if you're interested in working with us, visit gonextplay.com. Until next time.